Hello and welcome to Indiana Arts Desk. I'm Marcus Jackman. Coming up tonight, a look at an upcoming concert in Indianapolis with a world-renowned choir, plus more. But first...
Yeah, our guards have to be particularly diligent. We've put several signs up asking people not to touch them and why. It's just the oils in your skin that are damaging for textiles. And we've informed about the light level and that sort of thing. But they are, textiles by their very nature, are really tactile, and I think it's hard to... I have to put my hands behind my back when I walk through.
That's Nancy Huth, the Assistant Director and Curator of Education at Ball State's Museum of Art. The textiles in question, which Indiana Arts Desk can concur are difficult to keep your hands off of, are kimonos. Kimonos date back to the 8th century AD in Japan, and while they may appear to be simple robes to unfamiliar eyes, they are anything but, says Huth.
I mean, we think of it as, it's like a bathrobe, and you just stick it on, you tie a belt around it, but it's not anywhere near that simple. There are multiple layers. They're wrapped in a certain way. Most of them are too long for the wearer, so there's a gathering up at the waist and a folding over that's done in a very particular way, and the obi goes around that in a very particular way. So it's a complicated, rather lengthy process to actually dress in one of these. And I've heard a Japanese woman say that she was going to wear her kimono to such and such an occasion, but that meant it'd be another half hour to an hour before she was able to rest at night because it would take that long to get it undone and packed away properly.
And the kimono lends itself to certain formal postures and gait.
Before chairs were commonly used in Japan, the kimono was the perfect garment, but once chairs were introduced, sitting down on a chair in a kimono doesn't really lend itself to that. It works better for kneeling on the floor with your feet beneath you. And I tried that the other day, and it made a lot of sense. And you sit this way, and your knees are beneath you, and it works for that.
While some contemporary artists make the kimono their literal canvas, Huth says, the kimonos in this exhibit at Ball State's Museum of Art were designed as decorative objects, in the same way that fine porcelain can be appreciated for its aesthetics and utility.
These were actually worn, and they weren't worn as works of art for the wearer. They were just worn as really nice kimonos. Most of them. Some of them are actually sort of daily wear kinds of things. So these fall under that category of sort of decorative arts and textiles.
The exhibit of kimonos at the museum is subtitled Traditional Motifs, which Huth says refers not just to the traditional images that one might associate with Japanese art, like cranes, for example, but also the craft and characteristics of making kimonos.
But in addition to that, you see a lot of abstract kinds of images, stripes, geometric patterns, organic patterns.
Like that watery...
Right, just like the one there in the corner that's sort of a wavy pattern printed on the kimono. But in addition to that, there's several traditional techniques that are used in this exhibition to adorn these, from embroidery to a kind of resist dyeing called yuzen, to a kind of figurative weave called rinzu, to what appears to be painting and printing and different kinds of tie-dye techniques. So a lot of those techniques appear in this exhibition, and some of those techniques have motifs that are associated with them, certain ways this kind of thing always looks.
Huth points out one particular kimono, a deep charcoal with dusty rose designs. In the gallery's low light, kept dim to prevent the textiles from fading, it's not until you get within 3 feet that you realize the designs aren't made of single lines, but are series of dots on the kimono, thousands and thousands of painstakingly placed droplets.
Yeah, this is an unusual technique called urushi, which means lacquer. And it's a kind of a kimono referred to as visiting wear. And visiting wear tends to have an all-over decoration, but a relatively subtle one. And this one is decorated with little tiny beads of lacquer that appear to have been... It looks... To our eyes, I think it looks like plastic almost, but it's little tiny beads of lacquer that have been apparently painted on.
Another technique on another kimono, this one made for a bride at her wedding reception, shows an elegant riot of subtle colors and shades which are dyed into the deep, rich purple of the kimono. The technique is called rinzu.
It's done with a glutinous rice paste, and my understanding is with a resist dye, you put the resist down and then you dye it, and the part that had the resist over it remains white, and then you can put it into another dye bath. And yuzen seems to have appeared in the 19th century, and it allowed artists a great deal of freedom because they could paint it on, so you could get these very delicate, see these white areas right here? Mm-hmm. That's been covered with the resist, so that part hasn't been dyed at all.
The 40 kimonos that make up the exhibit will remain on display on the second floor of the Ball State Museum of Art through March 7th. There will be a demonstration of how to tie and wear a kimono Sunday at 2:30 at the museum. Admission is free. For more information on the other programs associated with the exhibit or the museum as a whole, email inhuth, that's Nhuth, @bsu.edu.